Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing some interesting trade news coming out of the San Jose Sharks today, and that is that they have acquired defenseman Jake Walman from the Detroit Red Wings, along with a second-round pick in exchange for nothing. Well, technically not nothing, as the Sharks had to give up future considerations, but that's as close to nothing as one can get in the NHL these days. And usually when a player is involved in such a deal, they're either most likely just either kind of bad, or they're not living up to their big contract, or some sort of combination of the two things. And yet neither is the case when discussing Walman. Walman was actually a rather serviceable top four defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings. He was a very frequent partner of their number one guy, Moritz Seider, on their top defensive unit. And the Red Wings weren't some terrible team. While they didn't make the playoffs, they only ended up missing out on it on the literal last day of the regular season. So this is a pretty decent team to be trading one of their better defensemen on the roster. And in terms of his contract, it is also incredibly reasonable. He's got just 2 years left remaining on it, and is only being paid $3.4 million. Incredibly fair for the type of value that he actually brings. So the fact that the Sharks were able to get a player of his caliber and didn't have to give up literally any assets to do it, and in fact ended up getting an asset with this second round pick, which by the way is this year's second round pick of the Tampa Bay Lightning, which means it'll be 53rd overall, an extra asset that the Sharks will have in their quest to try and move up in the draft that is coming up in the next few days. The fact that they were able to get the player and the valuable asset and didn't have to give up anything at all is what makes this trade such a massive question mark, and one of the most lopsided deals we have seen, not only for the Sharks but in the NHL in a very, very long time. There is zero question of who actually wins out on this deal. It is 100 times out of 100 the San Jose Sharks. And what makes this even more interesting is the coincidence that this comes a few days after the Sharks had their own lopsided move, which was when they picked up Barclay Goodrow off of waivers from the New York Rangers. That was the type of deal, and it felt as though the Rangers would have had to give up some extra assets to get a team to pick up that massive contract that Goodrow had that was clearly not worth it, and yet the Sharks sort of bailed them out in that type of situation. Is it strictly a coincidence that the Sharks have been involved in some of the more lopsided moves we have seen in a while in the NHL over the last few days, or perhaps is there some connection? Not going to necessarily theorize on that, but it is definitely something to think about. To go further on what Jake Walman will actually bring to the San Jose Sharks, I've discussed in my free agency preview that the Sharks would likely look to upgrade in their defensive unit. This was the major issue for the team this past season, and so I theorized on certain players who the Sharks could sign in unrestricted free agency, like DeMello or Dillon or Ekman Larson. Now, with this trade to pick up Walman, he immediately inserts himself into the top four, which begs the question of whether or not the Sharks are done in this situation. Will they still look to pick up another unrestricted free agent to continue to bolster that defensive core? Well, the first thing to mention is the fact that Walman is only making the $3.4 million. There is still a bit of a bridge to gap to even simply reach the cap floor of next season. The Sharks are within now about $6 million of getting to that point, and depending on whether or not they sign players like Cunnin and Zadina, they might have to make another extra move to actually reach that point. Will it be an unrestricted free agent defenseman that will continue to help out in the top four? Perhaps, as that could be a very easy target for Mike Grier to go for. But another question that comes out of this is what this means for the future of Mario Ferraro on the San Jose Sharks. Now, he has been in the trade rumors over the last year or so. His name has come up occasionally, but it feels as though it has really picked up as we have moved closer and closer to the draft that is coming very, very soon at this point. There are many theories of the teams that are above the San Jose Sharks currently in the draft, teams like the New Jersey Devils or the Ottawa Senators, that are looking for immediate roster help if they were to move on from their first round pick. And the Mario Ferraro is indeed that type of immediate roster help who would help in a sort of smaller role on a different team. The Sharks currently are playing him as their number one guy, and he's very clearly not built for such a position. But if he were to move on to New Jersey and be like a a number 3 or a number 4, he would definitely find much more of a home there. So does this Jake Walman trade make Mario Ferraro slightly more expendable? Could the Sharks go for some future assets by trading away their current number 1 defenseman? Perhaps, perhaps not, but this is a very good deal for Mike Grier. That is obviously here the case, and it is indeed a situation where you have to wonder what kind of catch is coming down the line for how Mike Grier was able to pull this off, because this is not a situation where the Red Wings even needed to free up cap space instantly. They've got over $30 million of cap space at this point, so there doesn't seem to be any rational reason for why this may have occurred. So I guess we're left to wait and see over the next coming weeks/months. Class dismissed.